Okay, I'm Latino and I really like my culture. I mean, I'm really proud of being Latino and shit. But if there's something I don't like at all from it, is the fact that they got this mindset that holds back a lot of people from learning second language, that you don't speak another language unless you really need it. Let me explain you this. I work with a bunch of Mexicans that grew up in here, and the thing with them is that they grew up speaking in English. That's their first language, but they also learned Spanish from their parents. So they can speak pretty good both languages, but if you ask them, they gonna tell you they feel comfier speaking in English. On the other hand, there's me and my partners that they only speak Spanish, and we all are willing to learn English to speak it as fluent as our first language. The problem with it is that, like I said at the beginning, you only speak Spanish. So what happens? I try to speak to these Mexican partners in English, so that way I improve my skills in this second language, and that way I'm learning. A couple of days ago, these partners of mine that only speak Spanish, they told me, "Yo, why you speaking to them in English if they perfectly speak Spanish? Yo, you sound so ridiculous speaking in English." And it's like, how the fuck? Nah, tell me, how the fuck are you gonna learn a second language if you don't speak it? Like, how the fuck you learn how to drive if you don't drive? I mean, you're not gonna learn how to drive by reading the manual.
What's good, my friends? This is Real English coming through your radio. I'm your host, Tony Kaizen. And today we're talking about a topic that applies to a very large part of the Real English radio audience. Mi gente latina, mis cuates, mis parceros, mis panas, mis compañeros, mis amigos, mis hermanitos, todos ustedes de México a Argentina o hasta Argentina. ¿Cuál es alguien que me corrija, porfa? Anyway, I'm talking to each and every one of y'all. Now, one of my TikTok followers, whose name I believe is Ezekiel, but I'm not sure about that, he tagged me in the video that I just played, and he's talking about his frustration with the mindset of a lot of Latino people who are learning to speak English as a foreign language. And to be fair, this mindset really isn't exclusive to the Latino community. I mean, I've taught English to people from literally all over the world, and I can tell you for sure that this mindset is found in every part of the world. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, you've almost certainly heard me touch on this topic before, so you probably know exactly what I'm going to say. But for all the new listeners and those of you who need another kick in the ass, allow me to give you my thoughts on the mindset that plagues so many communities and keeps us from achieving even the simplest of goals. Now, let's start with the cultural pressure and the social mindset that was described in the video, because it's essentially a mindset that says, I'm not going to learn or do anything new unless I absolutely have to. I'm not going to start studying English unless I have to. I'm not going to talk to real people unless I have to. I'm not going to struggle unless I have to. I'm not going to discipline myself unless I have to. And for most people, the moment when they have to do those things is the moment when they realize that their technical skills are often not enough to get the job they desire, or to move to the country they want to live in, or to meet the people they need to know. But I know for a fact I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the potential career opportunities that come from learning to speak English proficiently. I mean, that's the reason that most people are learning the language in the first place. But I do, however, think it's important to mention the more intangible benefits of speaking English or any other language. And the first one is cultural understanding. Now, you probably heard me say many times that it's virtually impossible to separate language from culture, because it's our culture that determines how we use the language itself. So when you learn to speak a foreign language, you'll inevitably immerse yourself in another culture. And you've got to open your mind up to seek to understand other people's values, traditions, their worldviews, their sense of humor, amongst many other things. And it's through the exploration of someone else's culture that you come to understand why they say and do certain things. And you also come to appreciate that there's more than one way to see and live life. And this makes you a more empathetic individual. Someone who's capable of developing relationships with different people from all walks of life, not just yours. And that's a skill that's undeniably valuable no matter the context. You can connect with a broader range of people from various countries who may or may not speak your native language, whether it's friends, business partners, life partners. The more languages you speak, the more opportunities you have to develop a rich and exciting life. And this is a big part of what made my trips to Mexico and Brazil so special. Because by learning those people's languages, I was able to make connections before I even arrived in the country. And those people helped me to experience the authentic culture in a way that a tourist never could. Now, obviously, in your case, you're learning English, not Spanish or Portuguese, but in some ways, this is even better and more useful, because I'd like to imagine that you can go to almost any country in the world right now, and you'll find someone who speaks English, which means that almost anywhere you go, you can find someone to communicate with. And even if you never travel anywhere, we live in the age of the internet. And the majority of information posted on the internet is posted in English, whether it's music or movies and series or podcasts, articles and books, research papers, online courses, I mean, you name it. By learning English, you're literally opening up an entire world of information that could change your life for the better. Now, conversely, if you never take the time to learn this language, you'll forever be limited to the information that's available in your native language, thus limiting your knowledge of the world and what's happening in it. So those are some major benefits that I think don't get talked about enough. Everybody's thinking, how can I make the money with the English? What's the quickest way to get fluent so I can get the job, get the paycheck, whatever? And I totally get that. Trust me, I understand that. But a lot of other benefits that come from learning English are just less tangible. That doesn't mean they're less valuable. So that's my 2 cents on it. But another thing that really doesn't get talked about, I think, and something that I totally identify with, is the personal growth and the confidence that comes from learning to speak a foreign language. Because when you truly master a foreign language, or any skill, honestly, but we're talking about language, right? So when you master one, it gives you such an incredible confidence boost that will affect literally every other area of your life. Because skill mastery requires great discipline, great consistency, and great humility. And by simply watching yourself overcome the various struggles that come with learning to speak English, you'll realize that you're capable of doing much more than you initially thought. You can do so much more than you think you can do. And you'll realize that the communication skills that you learn along the way will easily transfer to any conversation in any language. You'll also realize that you're a more sociable person that's no longer afraid to make conversation with people, because you had to have hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations with strangers in order to master the English language. The same way you did with your native language, which I'm sure you've heard me say before, my friend. Mastering a foreign language will give you the confidence that you need to learn 3 more languages, 4 more languages, 5 more languages if you want to. And once you do that, you'll realize that you were always capable of doing great things. You simply needed to learn how to learn, and then put in the time, put in the effort, put in the practice, and wait patiently for the results. So personal growth is a big one, man. Seeing that you can learn new skills on your own just using the internet, which is a fucking godsend. I mean, I really don't even think I talk about it enough, like how good we have it these days compared to our parents or our grandparents who had no concept of talking to strangers on the fucking internet, learning anything you want to learn about another country with the internet, social media, a smartphone. It's fucking incredible. And so when you watch yourself teach yourself something, when you watch yourself learn something, by putting in the time and the effort and the discipline and the practice, overcoming your fears and anxieties, getting better at talking to people, you just naturally feel more confident. That's where confidence comes from, life achievements. And make no mistake about it, teaching yourself to speak a foreign language is a life achievement. Don't let anybody tell you different. That shit is hard and it requires a lot of dedication, and most people will never do it. It's something to be proud of. So when you watch yourself do that, you're naturally going to feel a sense of pride. knowing you can learn anything you want to learn, you can talk to anybody you need to talk to. They could drop you in the middle of the United States and you'd survive. The middle of the UK, the middle of Australia, anywhere where people speak English, you'll be fine. You can make friends anywhere. Those are one of those intangible benefits I was speaking about that you can't really quantify. You understand? You can quantify how many zeros are on the paycheck, you know what I'm saying? How many job interviews you did or whatever, how many job offers you got. But confidence, life satisfaction, self-esteem, pride, these are things that you can't really write down on a paper and see how much you have. But they all come from doing things like learning to speak a foreign language, getting out of your comfort zone and growing as an individual. So it's another thing that really needs to get considered when we talk about this mindset of I'm only going to learn and do new things when I absolutely have to. This is how you stay small in terms of your personality, your character, your life experience, your salary, your social circle. This is how you stay small, by holding that mindset, as opposed to what they stereotypically call, or they, what's the word I would use? To what is often referred to as the growth mindset, which is exactly what I just described a second ago. So it's not always about the money, man. In fact, gaining confidence and experience and disciplining yourself and having a bit of self-esteem leads to more opportunities like better jobs, more money, or whatever it may be. So it's all connected, bro. It's all connected. And it all starts with your mindset. That's really the point. And the last thing I'll mention in this part of the episode is the cognitive benefits. Because they also say that learning to speak a foreign language is incredibly beneficial for your brain health, your memory, your problem-solving skills, creative thinking, being able to think in abstract ways. You know, all this gets improved when you're learning to speak a foreign language and communicate in a way that's totally different from what you've known your whole life. And all this leads to a more flexible and resilient mind. And that makes me think of a passage that I read very recently in the book, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. So let me grab my book really quick. I'm going to read this to you because it's totally related to what we're talking about right now. The Flexible Mind by Robert Greene. You find it frustrating when people resist your good ideas out of sheer stubbornness, but you are largely unaware of how the same problem, your own stubbornness, afflicts you and limits your creative powers. As children, our minds were remarkably flexible. We could learn at a rate that far surpasses our adult capacities. We can attribute much of the source of this power to our feelings of weakness and vulnerability. Sensing our inferiority in relation to those older than us, we felt highly motivated to learn. We were also genuinely curious and hungry for new information. We were open to the influence of parents, peers, and teachers. In adolescence, many of us had the experience of falling under the sway of a great book or writer. We became entranced by the novel ideas in the book, and because we were so open to influence, these early encounters with the exciting ideas sank deeply into our minds and became part of our own thought processes, affecting us decades after we absorbed them. Such influences enriched our mental landscape. And in fact, our intelligence depends on the ability to absorb the lessons and ideas of those who are older and wiser. Just as the body tightens with age, however, so does the mind. And just as our sense of weakness and vulnerability motivated the desire to learn, so does our creeping sense of superiority slowly close us off to new ideas and influences. Some may advocate that we all become more skeptical in the modern world. But in fact, a far greater danger comes from the increasing closing of the mind that afflicts us as individuals as we get older, and seems to be afflicting our culture in general. Now, let us define the ideal state of mind as one that retains the flexibility of youth along with the reasoning powers of the adult. Such a mind is open to the influence of others. And just as you use strategies to melt people's resistance, you must do the same on yourself, working to soften up your rigid mental patterns. To reach such an ideal, we must first adopt the key tenet of the Socratic philosophy. One of Socrates' earliest admirers was a young man named Chaerephon. Frustrated that more Athenians did not revere Socrates as he himself did, Chaerephon visited the oracle of Delphi and posed a question. Is there a man wiser than Socrates in all of Athens? The oracle answered no. Chaerephon felt vindicated in his admiration of Socrates and rushed to tell his mentor the good news. Socrates, however, being a humble man, was not at all pleased to hear this and was determined to prove the oracle wrong. He visited many people, each eminent in their own field, politics, the arts, business, and asked them many questions. When they kept to knowledge of their field, they seemed quite intelligent, but then they would expatiate on all kinds of subjects about which they clearly knew nothing. On such subjects, they merely spouted the conventional wisdom. They did not think through any of these ideas. Finally, Socrates had to admit that the oracle was indeed accurate. He was wiser than all the others because he was aware of his own ignorance. Over and over again, he examined and re-examined his own ideas, seeing inadequacies and infantile emotions lodged within them. His motto in life had become, "The unexamined life is not worth living." The charm of Socrates, what made him so devilishly fascinating to the youth of Athens, was the supreme openness of his mind. In essence, Socrates assumed the weaker, vulnerable position of the ignorant child, always asking questions. Think of it this way. We like to scoff at the superstitious and irrational ideas that most people held in the 17th century, but imagine how those of the 25th century will scoff at ours. Our knowledge of the world is limited, despite the advances of science. Our ideas are conditioned by the prejudices instilled in us by our parents, by our culture, and by the historical period we live in. They are further limited by the increasing rigidity of the mind. A bit more humility about what we know would make us all more curious and interested in a wider range of ideas. When it comes to the ideas and opinions you hold, see them as toys or building blocks that you're playing with. Some you will keep, and others you will knock down, but your spirit remains flexible and playful. To take this further, you can adopt a strategy promulgated by Friedrich Nietzsche. He who really wants to get to know something new, be it a person, an event, or a book, does well to entertain it with all possible love and to avert his eyes quickly from everything in it he finds inimical, repellent, false, indeed to banish it from the mind. So that, for example, he allows the author of a book the longest start, and then, like one watching a race, desires with beating heart that he may reach his goal. For with this procedure, one penetrates to the heart of the new thing, to the point that actually moves it. And precisely this is what is meant by getting to know it. If one has gone this far, reason can afterwards make its reservations. That overestimation, that temporary suspension of the critical pendulum, was only an artifice for luring forth the soul of the thing. Even in writing that is inimical to your own ideas, there is often something that rings true, which represents the soul of the thing. Opening yourself up to its influence in this way should become part of your mental habits, allowing you to better understand things, even to criticize them properly. Sometimes, however, that soul will move you as well, and gain some influence, enriching your mind in the process. Upon occasion, it is good to let go of your deepest set of rules and restrictions. The great 14th century Zen master Basui posted at the door of his temple a list of 33 rules his monks were to abide by or be thrown out. Many of the rules dealt with alcohol, which was strictly forbidden. One night, to totally disconcert his literal-minded monks, he showed up to a talk completely drunk. He never apologized or repeated it, but the lesson was simple. Such rules are merely guidelines, and to demonstrate our freedom, we must violate them from time to time. Finally, when it comes to our own self-opinion, try to have some ironic distance from it. Make yourself aware of its existence and how it operates within you. Come to terms with the fact that you are not as free and autonomous as you like to believe. You do conform to the opinions of the groups you belong to. You do buy products because of subliminal influence. You can be manipulated. Realize as well that you are not as good as the idealized image of your self-opinion. Like everyone else, you can be quite self-absorbed and obsessed with your own agenda. With this awareness, you will not feel the need to be validated by others. Instead, you will work at making yourself truly independent and concerned with the welfare of others, as opposed to staying attached to the illusion of your self-opinion. Now, another thing that the young man pointed out in his video was the importance of practice. He said something like, how the fuck do you expect to learn to speak English if you never practice? How do you expect to learn to drive a car by reading the manual? And it sounds, when somebody says it to you, it sounds like common sense. It sounds obvious. Like, of course, I'm not going to learn how to drive a car by reading a book about driving cars. I'm never going to learn how to play football by reading books about football. Never going to learn how to write software by reading books about software. You have to actually do it and make the mistakes and get corrected and figure shit out and hit brick wall and figure out how to get through that brick wall and onto another wall. It's this never-ending process of trial and error and education. I mean, that's really what education is, isn't it? Trial, error, lesson. You try, you fail, you learn, you do it again. That's it. It's so incredibly simple, and so many of us refuse to accept it. I cannot tell you how many times over the past 6 or 7 years I've gotten the same exact question. Why can I understand English speakers perfectly fine, but I can't express myself in English? I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten that question, man. And you got to be really empathetic and patient as somebody who has dedicated themselves to teaching other people, because you have to accept everybody's on their own path. Everybody learns things at different times and in different ways, and everybody goes through the same trials and tribulations. Everybody has to overcome similar obstacles. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with asking the question. What I'm saying is it's so common, and that the fact that people are still asking the same question leads me to believe it's just something that we don't want to accept, because it's not like it's a secret. And maybe that doesn't make sense to you. Let me try to say that differently. People keep asking me that question, why can I understand but I can't speak? And to me, just based on my experience, even before I started teaching or learning languages, it just always seemed obvious to me that if you want to learn something, you have to do it. And I guess now that I'm sitting here talking, I also acknowledge the fact that everybody learns in different ways. I've always been what they call like a kinesthetic learner, meaning I learn by doing things. If you tell me to read about it, I'm not going to learn a fucking thing. I won't retain any of that information. If I watch somebody doing it, then I can try to imitate it and get the idea. If you just say it and all I'm doing is listening, it's not going to be that clear to me. But if I can watch you do it and then I go and try to do it, I will learn it no matter what it is. Other people, I got a good friend. If you write it down on paper, he will never forget it, ever. But if I say it to him, it's like it goes in one ear and out the other. So I acknowledge the fact that everybody learns in different ways. And maybe that's why it's always been so obvious to me with language. If you want to learn, you got to fucking speak. So the answer to that question, why can I understand but I can't speak, is because you never speak. You're reading books about English. You're watching YouTube videos about English and TikTok videos and Instagram posts and buying online courses and listening to podcasts, but you never talk to anybody. How do you expect to learn to talk if you never talk? It sounds obvious when I say it, but for whatever reason, in our day-to-day lives, we don't acknowledge that simple fact. It's like it's just outside of our field of view. You know what I mean? Just waiting for you to turn your head slightly and acknowledge its presence. That's the way I think about it. So I really don't feel I need to spend too much time talking about the importance of practice, because it is the only way you are going to learn and improve a skill. It is the only way. I say again, the only way. Anyone who tells you something different is trying to sell you something that you most likely don't need. I will say it one more time. The only way to learn to speak English is by speaking English. But the last and most important thing I want to touch on here when it comes to mindset the mindset that the young man described in his video. One of the things that keeps so many people from making progress when learning to speak English or doing anything that involves human interaction or exposure is judgment. Judgment of oneself and judgment from one's peers or friends, co-workers, family members, or whoever it may be. This is a really, really, really big one. You know, a lot of people have made up this scenario in their mind that native speakers are the ones they need to worry about. Native speakers, they're racist, they're impatient, they're mean, they're rude, they make fun of me, blah, blah, blah. Even if they've never had that experience, they just heard somebody else say it. And so now that's what they believe too. And of course, I'm generalizing. But what I'm trying to convey here is that a lot of people have the idea that natives are the people they should be nervous around. Natives are the ones they should be afraid to make mistakes with because, it's a native, he's going to laugh at my level and he speaks perfectly and I speak terribly and, he's just going to think I'm stupid. When most of the time, I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10 times, or more naturally, 9 times out of 10, which is what we normally say, 9 times out of 10 is not the native you need to worry about, especially if you're on a language exchange app or some shit like that where it's clear the point is to practice. But I would venture to say, even if you go to a country, people, regardless of the culture or what they look like or what language they speak, tend to appreciate a foreigner that's at least trying to learn their language and culture. Most people appreciate that no matter what part of the world we're talking about, except maybe France. I'm just joking. I've never been to France. I'm just talking shit. I've heard so many stories about like French people don't like when Americans try to speak French. So I know I got listeners in France. Somebody confirm that for me. Anyway, my point is most natives don't give a shit. They appreciate it, bro. They're patient. They're more than happy to sit there and try to understand you. Now, that doesn't mean that all natives are teachers. Just because they're a native speaker doesn't mean that they're going to correct every mistake that you make. It doesn't mean they're going to understand everything you're trying to say, even if you're saying it in a elementary way. What it means is that they're not sitting there judging your every word and your thick accent and how long it takes you to form a sentence. Most people aren't thinking that way about you. You are thinking that way about yourself. And you're projecting that insecurity onto another person to validate the image of yourself that you've created. That's often what's happening. It has nothing to do with other people. And on another token, how would I say that? Not on the other hand, but another thing, a different set of people, it's not the natives you need to worry about. It's typically how would I say that? Because the word is your peers, right? But that's very broad. That's very general. I'd say let's use the word or the term the people closest to you, whether it's your friends or your coworkers or family members, people like this. Those are the ones that you often need to worry about. Just like the young man described in his video, his friends talking to him and saying, why are you speaking to the Mexicans in English when you know they speak Spanish? You sound so ridiculous speaking English. Your accent is trash. Your grammar sucks. You didn't use the right verb, man. You sound like a fucking idiot. Why don't you just speak Spanish, bro? What's wrong with you? You sound stupid. These are the people you need to worry about. You're not hearing that from native speakers on a regular basis. It's your friends. It's your countrymen, your classmates, your coworkers talking shit, hating on you, jealous, envious, because they've got that same stupid, limited, closed mindset. I want to look like I know everything. I want to be cool, stay in my zone of comfort. Anybody who's trying to do better than me, anybody who's stepping out of their comfort zone is a threat to me and reminds me I'm not doing anything with myself, so I have to bring them down. I have to make fun of them. I have to make them doubt themselves. I have to make them insecure like I am so that we all stay down here in the fucking dirt. These are the people you need to be worried about. And that's not even the right way of saying it. These are the people that have a problem with you trying to learn to speak English. It's not natives. So you don't need to be worried about these people. What I'm saying is these are the people that are causing you all of that insecurity and self-doubt. It's not the natives. It's typically the people closest to you that are talking shit and hating on you and making jokes and condescending and all that nonsense. So the fear of judgment by other people, being that one person in the room that's speaking elementary or intermediate English in front of all the other people trying to learn English, and you're like, oh, well, my English isn't perfect. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to judge me. Her English is better than mine. She's only been learning for 9 months. I've been learning for 3 years, and I can't speak that good. I'm a piece of shit. I'm trash. She thinks I'm stupid. And then that's that inner monologue. You start to doubt yourself. You start to imagine them judging you the way you judge yourself. Or you start replaying all those negative comments that were made by your friends. You sound so ridiculous speaking English. Why don't you just speak Spanish? What's wrong with you? You start to play that over and over again in your head. And I think it's a cultural thing, man. I do. Like I said, that mindset of we all need to look confident and in control. We're never going to learn or do anything new, because to learn or do something new means to look like a beginner. And if I look like a beginner, I look stupid. I look like a child. I look like I'm not in control. I look like I don't know what I'm doing. And I could never look like that in front of other people. I have a reputation to maintain. I got an ego to protect. And that's a cultural thing. It's totally based on the way you were raised. If you weren't raised right, if you weren't taught to be humble, if you weren't taught the difference between confidence and arrogance, that's the way you think. That's the way most people think, which is why most people never learn shit after the age of 18, if they ever learned anything. I know it's a pessimistic statement, and it's very general, but I do believe it. And I think that's why. It's all about your mindset. Fear of being judged by others, or the arrogance to think that, or to tell yourself the lie that you already know everything that you need to know. To tell yourself the lie that looking like or even being a beginner is somehow humiliating or a bad thing. And this is why so many people have no confidence when it comes to speaking in front of other people. They have no confidence when it comes to openly learning a new skill. Everyone's discouraged. I could never do that. I could never do this. They would laugh at me. I sound stupid. I'm dumb. I'm worthless. Bah, 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 bah. You know? And what you often find is, if you are one of those people that doesn't even care about all that stuff, and you choose every day to be dedicated and learn this skill, to speak this language, to fumble over your words, to search for how to put sentences together with that crazy accent that you got to work on, or whatever it is, whatever you're insecure about, you're working on it publicly. You're not afraid to let people hear you speaking English. You're not afraid to talk to strangers. You're not afraid of any of that shit. You'll realize that you'll often end up very isolated, because we tend to hang around people who think and act like us. And so if you're one of those people that's getting out of your comfort zone, learning new skills, trying to grow as a person, and nobody else around you is doing that, well, now you're an outsider. And nobody wants to be an outsider, or most of us don't. And so just the circumstances themselves lead you to spend a lot of time alone. Now you can't relate to any of your friends because they're comfortable with a small life, doing the same thing every day, never learning anything new, never talking about anything interesting, never growing as people, never going anywhere, just the same old shit. And your mindset is totally different. You want to grow, you want to travel, you want to progress in your career, you want to meet new people, you want to learn new skills. And so how are you going to relate to these people? You have nothing in common anymore. So now you got to find new friends, which is a completely different conversation. We're just talking about learning to speak English. We haven't talked about actually making friends. So there's a whole nother challenge. And for a lot of people, when they find themselves in that position of that isolated position and not knowing where to go from here, they're just in the middle of the fucking desert by themselves, not wanting to go back where they came from, but also not knowing where they're trying to go. That's often enough to cause people to go back to where they came from, to mediocrity, to the same old shit, the same old friend group doing the same dumb shit every weekend, having the same conversations. It just, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people struggle to stand on their own and do something different, be someone different. And it all goes back to the mindset. The fear of being judged, the fear of looking different, the fear of standing out, fear of being oneself, whatever that means. And so I guess if I had to summarize this episode, the point is, it all starts with your mindset, bro. It all starts with your mindset, figuring out why you want to learn this thing, What are the benefits? How is that going to change your life for the better? What's the purpose of all this? Figuring out how you're going to accomplish that goal, what methods or strategies, what tactics, what do you need to do to ensure that you are going to be as consistent as possible, whether it's 10 minutes a day or 2 hours a day. It doesn't matter. Consistency is much more important than intensity, because you can study for 6 hours today and then spend the next 3 weeks without studying at all. How much of that are you going to retain? But if you study 30 minutes a day for the next 6 weeks, now you're getting somewhere. You see what I'm saying? So intensity isn't as important. It's about, how do I figure out the right way for me? The right way for me to be consistent with this shit. And what do I need and who do I need around me? What type of support do I need to achieve this goal? And whoever's not on the same page, whoever's not going to be supportive, whoever's talking shit and hating on me or has some negative shit to say, I need to distance myself from those people, because I can't help them. I can't save them. You might have heard the idiom before, which goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make that horse drink. I might have said this on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And essentially what that means is, you can lead somebody to exactly what they need, but you can't force them to take advantage of what they need. If the horse is thirsty, doesn't know where to find water, you can take it all the way to the lake. Have a drink, go for it. But if they choose to just stand there and look at you like they're stupid, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't force them to drink. That's on them. That's their choice. And so when it comes to your friends, your family, whoever it may be, often people close to you, if you got to leave them behind or just stop talking to them about learning English or other goals you're trying to achieve, just stop doing that. Just accept that's the way it is, bro. A lot of people are totally fine being mediocre, and you're not one of those people. And it's not about judging anybody. If that's the life they want to live, then let them live that motherfucking life. That's up to them. But you don't need to be stressing, saying, why don't they think like me? Why won't they just see this is the proper way? Why won't they do what I'm doing? Or what's their problem? Nah, bro. Fuck all that. They got their decisions and you got yours. And if you decide to learn to speak English proficiently, you've got to accept everything that comes with that. The necessity for discipline, consistency, practice, open-mindedness, humility, a bit of extroversion, creativity, you know what I'm saying? All the things that come with that, and all the time it's going to take to achieve this goal, and all the people that might not want to see you achieve that goal, all the people that might not care that you have that goal, all the people that might have something negative to say about that goal, even if they're people close to you. It just is what it is, bro. It just is what it is. You can't control none of that, but you can control your mindset. And that's what this episode is about. Getting the proper mindset to achieve your goals. Because without the right mindset, you're going nowhere. I can guarantee you.